What's going on, guys? John Elder here from sqlalchemy.com, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to use databases with Flask and Python. Alright guys, like I said, in this video, we're going to start to learn about databases with Flask. But before we get started, if you like this video and want to see more like it, be sure to smash the like button below, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, and check out sqlalchemy.com where I have dozens of courses with hundreds of videos that teach you to code. Use coupon code YouTube1 to get $30 off membership. That's all my courses, videos, and books for a one-time fee at just $49, which is insanely cheap. All right, so it's been a little while since we have done a Flask video, so I figured it was time to jump in and do one. And I've been getting a lot of questions about databases with Flask, and it's actually pretty easy. So in the last video, if you remember, we looked at how to use static files. We changed some CSS here. Really quickly, I'm going to go back to my code and click on the style.css, and let's change this back to black, and let's change the background back to white, just because that blue is fairly annoying. So if we save this, come back here and hit reload, okay, we're back to normal. Also, I don't really like this gray background, so let's head over to our base.html file real quick in our templates folder and look at our navbar code. And at the top here, you see this navbar light. I'm just going to change this to dark. And then here, BG light, I'm going to change that to dark as well. So if we save this, head back over here and hit reload, boom, now it's dark. I kind of like that better. So, okay, in this video, we're going to look at databases. And like I said, databases with Flask is fairly easy. And we're going to use SQLite 3 database that comes with Python. It's fairly trivial to swap out different types of databases, MySQL, Postgres, whatever you like. In this video, we're just going to use the basic SQLite 3, and then maybe in the future, I'll show you how to do different types of databases. But like I said, you just swap out some settings and it's mostly the same. So what we need is to first pip install something called sqlalchemy. And it's just a little module that deals with database stuff for us, connects to the database and does some things. So let's head over to our terminal here. And I'm going to hit Control-C to break out of this and clear the screen. And we're in our C myFlask directory. Remember, our virtual environment is turned on. And now we could just go pip install Flask-sqlalchemy. SQLALCHEMY. sqlalchemy. And boom, 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 it's doing its thing. Okay, so that's all there is to that. Now let's head back over to our code and look at our app.py file. Remember, this is the file that holds most of our sort of heavy lifting stuff in our app. And at the top, we just want to from Flask_sqlalchemy. And notice this is an underscore, not a dash. Even though we pip installed Flask sqlalchemy with a dash, we import it with an underscore like that. That's fairly common with Python things. And we want to import sqlalchemy. And the SQL and the A are all capital, so sort of keep that in mind. And we're also going to be using dates in our database. We want to keep track of the date. So let's also, while we're at it, from datetime, import datetime. This is not really a part of the database installation, but we're going to be using this in a minute, so we might as well import it now. So, okay, so now right under where we had sort of initialize our app here, let's go app.config, and we want to say sqlalchemy underscore database underscore URI. And then we set this equal to SQLite : // These are 3 forward slashes. This is going to indicate a relative path to where our database file is sitting. And we want to create a database called friends.db. So in this video, we're going to create a friend list, a list of our friends, just a very basic database table with one thing, names of our friends, and then, you know, we can put those names of our friends on the screen or whatever, right? Just very basic. I understand, not too exciting, but just to learn the very basics of how to use databases, how to put data in and take data out. That's what we're going to look at in this video. So create a database called friends.db. You could call it test.db or anything you want. It doesn't really matter. So, okay, Now we want to initialize the database. So that here we just go db equals sqla, all capital, chemy, sqlalchemy, but the sql and a are capital, and then we just want to pass in our app, right? Okay, so that's all there is to that. Now we want to create a model. So let's go create database model. And with most web frameworks, you sort of abstract away the SQL and you just create a class, right? And then you create a class with Python, and then in this case, sqlalchemy will convert that class, that Python code, into your basic SQL code, right? So we don't have to really write SQL. We're just going to write Python that's going to be converted into SQL. But to do that, we have to define our model, and we do that with a class. So let's create a class, and let's call this friends, and it is a db.model. Make sure to capitalize the M in model. And then the first thing we want to do is create an ID. Anytime you're dealing with databases, you always want an ID to keep track of your entries into the database, and that ID will be unique. So the first friend you enter will be friend number 1. The second friend you enter will be friend number 2. And then later on, if you want to look up or delete a friend, you can say delete friend ID 2. So that way, if you have 2 Bobs in there and you say delete Bob, it doesn't know which one to delete. But if you say delete ID 2, it knows because those IDs are unique. So create an ID, and we go db.column, capital C. And this is how we sort of create columns in our database. We call db.column. And then inside of here, this is going to be a db.integer, because it's a number, right? ID number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are integers. And we want to make sure this is the primary key. And that's just what I've been talking about. The ID is the primary key. It's unique. Each friend in our database has their own primary key, their own unique ID, right? It's just a basic database thing. And so we call primary underscore key, and then let's just set this equal to true. So that will create an ID. Now, let's also create a name. So what do we want to save to our database? We want to save our friends' names, right? That's all for now, just one thing, just a very basic intro video here, but we're going to save their names. So we'll create name equals, and again, it's just db.column. And this is going to be a db.string, and we'll talk about the different data types of this database later on, but we want to pass in 200 characters, so John, John, that's 4 characters. 200 is the most you can have, right? 200 is plenty for a name. You could probably put 50 and you'd be fine, but I'm just going to put 200. And then we also want to say nullable equals false. And what this means is you can't add a blank name. You have to actually type in a name. It can't be null. So we put this as false. So if we try to enter a blank name, we'll get an error, and then it'll say, hey, you tried to enter a blank name. You got to type in a name, right? So that's what that is. And then we also want to keep track of the date. So when did we add our friends, right? So let's go date underscore created. And this is going to be a db.column again. And inside of here, we want to be db.datetime. And the D and the T are both capitalized. And we want to set the default to datetime.utc now. And remember this datetime thing, that's why we imported datetime up here, because it'll keep track of the datetime for us. So, okay, piece of cake. And that is almost it. We also want to now create a function to return a string when we add something. And we'll look at why this is important later on. We don't really care at the moment, but let's just go define underscore underscore repr underscore underscore. We want to pass in self. And here we just want to return. And let's say we want to return name, and then let's go this %R, and outside of here we can go %, self.id. So this will return name 1, name 2, name 3 with whatever their ID is. And actually, we need to indent this because this has to be inside of this class, obviously. Okay. And again, we don't really care what this is. Think of it, if you're familiar with Django, whenever we create a model, we always do the same thing so that we can put a little string on the admin section in Django. Now, Flask obviously doesn't have an admin section, but sort of the same concept. And we'll probably talk about this more later on. It's not super important for this, but just put it in there and sort of make a note of it, and we'll talk about it later on. Okay, so let's look through here. This all looks good. Oh, I got an error right here. DB equals sqlalchemy. I always misspell alchemy. A-L-C-H-E-M-Y. Okay, so make sure that says sqlalchemy there. All right, so now we've got our model created. Now we need to actually create the database itself, and we have to do that from the command prompt from the terminal itself. So let's head over to our terminal. Now I'm using the git bash terminal, and what we need to do now is create an interactive Python shell to sort of kickstart our database here. And so since I'm on the git bash terminal, I'll type in win pty python. If you're using some other type of terminal, you probably just type in Python. If you're on a Mac, chances are you'll have to type in Python 3. Whatever you're doing, that will work. So here we go. We've got our interactive terminal thing here going up. And inside of here, all we have to do is go from app, import DB, and we're probably going to get an error here, SQL track modifications, something's deprecated here. We could just ignore this for now, or we could set this to false in the future. Maybe I'll show you how to do that later, but not super important. And then now we go db.create _ all, and then those two little parentheses, and that will create our new database. So now if we type in exit, that will get rid of that, clear the screen. Now we can Flask run to run our program here. Okay, so that's all we need to do to get this up and going. Now you'll notice here, you can't actually see our friends.db listed here. And that's kind of weird. If we actually go to file open, we can see here it is. It's actually showing up in our directory here. Just for whatever reason, it's not showing up there right now. But it exists and it is there, right? Okay, so now let's create another page in our app, and let's to do our friend list here. So let's go to our templates, right click new file. Let's go file, save as, and let's call this friends.html. And I'm going to open my, let's say, about page and just copy all of this and head over to our friends page and paste this in. And up here, instead of about me, let's say friends. And we don't need any of this stuff, so I can just kind of get rid of it. So save this. Now let's head over to our apps.py and let's create a route for this. And I'm just going to copy our about route here. And let's see, paste it in here. But instead of about, let's call this friends. And here for define about, let's define friends. And instead of our title being about John Elder, let's say my friend list. And we don't need these names. And we don't need this. So up here in our friends, we can create block title and then pass in that title that we just created. And then we also want to just copy this. Okay, so save this. Okay, so now let's head over to our base.html. Let's create a link for this in our nav bar. So I'm just going to copy one of these. How about our, I don't know, subscribe one? And after it, let's paste this in and let's call this friends. And instead of subscribe, we'll call it friends. Okay. And let's look back at our app.py file. And let's kind of look this. Instead of returning about, we want to obviously return friends. Okay, so that looks good. Let's save this and head back over to our app and hit reload. And now we get this friends link. When we click on it, boom, it still says friends. I'm not exactly sure why that's blue. When I hit reload, it turns back to white, as it should. Okay, so we've got this now. What do we want to do here? Let's head over to our friends.html and let's create a line break here. And let's create a quick form. And the action is we want to point this to our friend's page, point it back to itself. We want the method to equal post. Actually, this should be friends. We want an input field of a type equals text, and placeholder text to equal name, and value, we don't need to put that in. Let's put name equals name. Okay, we also want an input of type equals submit, little submit button. We want the value to equal add name. Let's give this a class of btn secondary. And that's just a bootstrap button. So it'll give us a gray button. And okay, we can save this and let's take a look at this. Okay, so we get this name, add name, we click on this, method not allowed. So what's going on here? Well, when we created a method, we named it as method equal post. And we know when we fill out a form, we're posting it. When we just go to a web page, we're getting the web page. But when we fill out a form, we're posting that form, right? So we need to designate that we're allowed to post to our page in our apps.py file here. So let's head over to our route. And here we could just slap a comma in here and go methods equals and then create a Python list. And we want post to be a method and we want get to be a method, right? So here we can now designate whether it's a post or a get. So we can say if request.method equals double equal to sign post, then do something else. We want to return the page, right? So instead of this, we could just return you clicked the button. Okay, so let's save this, come back here and hit reload. Now when we click this, it says you clicked the button. Otherwise, when we just reload this page, it gets the page and just puts the page on the screen. Okay, so now when we want to do something with our posted stuff, we can do it right in here. So what do we want to do? Well, let's create a variable called friend underscore name. And let's set that equal to request.form. And then what do we want to set it to? The name. So why name? Well, because in our form here, this input box, we named it right here, name, right? So we're saying basically grab the name from that form and put it in this variable. Now, once we have it in that variable, we want to sort of add it to the database. So let's go new friend. We're going to add a new friend to the database. And this is going to be friends and then name equal whatever this is called here. So we could just copy this and paste this in. So what's going on here? Well, friends is the name of our database table right here, right? Whatever you named your database table. And then we're going to say, hey, add this table's name to what is in this form. Why name? Because in our database table, we have this column called name. We're saying, hey, add the name from the form to the name in our column in our database, right? So, okay. So now, anytime you're doing database stuff, I don't care if it's Django, Ruby on Rails, Node, anything, it's always a two-step process. You sort of add the thing and then you commit the thing. So we've added the thing. Now we need to actually commit it to the database, to push it into the database. So we're going to, well, let's create a comment. Let's say push to database. So what we want to do is we want to set up a try block here. So try, we go db.session.add. And what do we want to add? We want to add this new friend that we've just created, right? And now we need to commit it. So we go db.session.commit. And that's it. And then afterwards, we want to return redirect, spell that right there. And what do we want to redirect to? Let's redirect to our friends page. So this redirect is new. We need to actually add it to our app. So up here after request, we can just put a comma and add that to redirect. Okay. Now this is a try block, so we need an except. So except, and this will happen if there's a problem adding it to the database, if we're not able to commit, if there's an error of some sort, this except block will run. And let's just return there was an error adding your friend. This will probably never actually happen, but if it does, this will get returned to the screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. It looks good. Now here, after we've added something to our database, we want to actually pull it out of the database and put it on the screen. So every time this page loads, we want to put a list of all of our friends on the screen. So we need to do that here in our else loop. Remember, this is the part that gets fired if we're getting the page. If we just go to the page, we're returning this page. Well, we also want to return that list of friends. So let's create a variable called friends, and let's set that equal to friends. That's our model name. Dot query dot, and let's order this by friends dot date underscore created. Right? And this friends dot date created is just straight out of our model here. Remember, we created this date created that keeps track of when the friend was added. So we're going to list these by, you know, most recent friend or whatever. So, okay, now we've got this variable. We can just now pass this into our template like we always do. So we can go friends equal friends. Okay, so we're good there. Now head over to our friends.html page, and underneath this form, I guess, let's create a couple of line breaks. And let's create some Jinja like we've done before. So let's go for friend in friends, create a little for loop. And we always want to end our for loop right away so we don't forget, end for. So what do we want to do? Let's create an h4 tag to make this a little bigger. And let's create, well, that'll work. And inside of here, what do we want to put on the screen? Well, we want to put friend.name, right? So we're looping through our friends variable that has a list of all of our friends. So for every item in that list, so for every friend in that list, we want to print out friend.name. Why .name? Because in our app.py file, in our model, that's the name of this column. We're saying for each of our friends, print out whatever's in this column, which is the name, which was the name that we got from the form when it submitted it. So, okay, that should work, I hope. If we save this, head back over here, hit reload. So let's add a name. Let's add old Bob. Boom, there's Bob. If we want to add Mary Elder, there's Mary Elder. Tim, you know, whatever. Sparkplug 41, a username or something, right? Anything we want, bunch of words, right? Sally, boom, and now they're all showing up here. Now, if we leave this page and head back to some other page and then come back here, boom, it still shows because these have been added to our database, right? They're there forever, and we're now pulling stuff out of this database every time this page is loaded. So that's it. That's all there is to adding things to a database and then pulling them out of the database. Now, this video is getting pretty long, so we're going to stop right here. Now, obviously, we may want to update each of these. You know, we may want to delete one of our friends if they piss us off. So how do we do that? We'll probably look at that in the next video. It's pretty simple. But this is the basics of using, you know, simple database stuff with Flask. Not too bad at all, and pretty fun. So that's all for this video. If you liked it, be sure to smash the like button below, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, which really helps the channel out, and I really appreciate it, guys. And check out Codemy.com, where you can use coupon code YouTube1 to get $30 off membership. Save pages $49 to access all my courses, over 40 courses, hundreds of videos, and the PDFs of all my best-selling coding books. Join over 100,000 students learning to code just like you. My name is John Elder from Codemy.com, and we'll see you in the next video.